hate to start the morning off like this, but there are no mansions waiting for you in heaven. Don't worry though, the reality of John 14 is way cooler than that. Hey everyone, I'm Colin. I am the resident nerd and Bible scholar at the Bible Uncut and Unfiltered. And this week I'm looking at John 14 here, and a very popular verse is the second one, in which Jesus says, "In my Father's house are many mansions. If it were not so, I would have told you. I go to prepare a place for you." Now, the end of that, there's actually a little bit of a translation debate whether that should be a question or a statement. If it was not so, wouldn't I tell you? Or if it wasn't so, I would tell you. But that's another matter for another day. What I want to focus on today is that many Christians have this idea of having a mansion in heaven. In fact, I remember singing a song in church that was called "I've Got a Mansion Just Over That Hilltop." However, that is not what the word there means. It does not mean mansion. And if the average Bible reader would just stop and think about it for a second, they'd realize that it doesn't make sense anyway. In my Father's house are many mansions. How can you have a mansion inside of a house? That doesn't make sense. And then if we consider the ancient context of the Bible, you'd realize that the concept of a mansion just didn't really exist anyway unless you were ridiculously wealthy and powerful. You know, today you can drive down the road and see basically mansions for people who just had enough money for it today. You don't have to be crazy wealthy to have a really big house. But in the ancient world, you had to be crazy wealthy to have that. That wouldn't be common. So it just doesn't seem to fit the context. It doesn't really work well. So what is the verse actually talking about? What was Jesus saying is waiting for us in the next life? Well, the word that is translated mansions, in many other translations, is said to be dwelling places. And that is an accurate translation. The Greek word is monē. Yes, money. Yeah, I know, bad. But yeah, the word is monē, and it comes from the Greek verb for dwell. So it really is just a place to live. So this actually draws on the ancient Jewish concept of when a young person would get married, they would actually build onto their parents' house. So basically they would build an in-law suite, but they were the in-laws. And yeah, that could absolutely cause some family dynamic problems right there. But that was the custom of the time. If I wanted to get married, I would tell the girl that I was going to marry her at some point, but I needed to build onto my parents' house first. I would go do that and then eventually go get her for the wedding, which would usually happen very shortly after that, now that I'm prepared with a place for us to live. So that is the analogy that Jesus is drawing on. He is speaking of his followers basically as a bride, which is another common metaphor used throughout the Bible of Christians, and saying that I am preparing a place for you in my Father's house. I'm building on a bunch of in-law suites for you so that we can all live together. Now, that is awesome. Jesus may also have been drawing on the rooms that Nehemiah and Ezra built into the temple when they came back from the Babylonian captivity. So there could be a play on that being the Father's house as well. Ultimately, whichever way you go with it, I think a key that we have to realize is that Jesus said there are many rooms in his Father's house. So often Christians are exclusionary toward other people. We act as if we are the in crowd and everyone else is out. We get it right and everyone else gets it wrong. But Jesus says that there's a lot of room in the Father's house. And I think it's supposed to be implied that each of these rooms is made specifically for the person. So if an all-knowing God is making a lot of rooms, that means there's going to be a lot of people there. So the point of this whole verse is not to argue over the size of the mansion that we get in heaven, but actually to remind us that there's a lot more room in our Father's house than what we make in our own houses and churches sometimes for the people around us. So maybe if God's making room for those people, so should we. If you enjoyed a study like this, we have a lot more content where we go in depth into Bible passages, both on our podcast and also on shorts on our social media. So be sure to check it out.